if I was Joe Biden and I wanted to win the state of Florida, I would not be taking Bernie Sanders' advice.
The garbage political analysis continues on MSNBC. Today they had on a former Republican congressman, to discuss what Joe Biden is doing wrong in Florida, which of course led to a discussion about it somehow being the fault of Bernie Sanders. Now, before I get to this absurd clip that I will completely annihilate in a minute, you may have seen headlines like this. This is from ABC News. Biden struggling to gain support of Latinos in key battleground state of Florida. And it isn't just Florida. Biden is struggling across the board with Latinos. And this is despite the fact that Biden's doing well overall in polling against Donald Trump. But Latino support has not been good. So before I go any further, here is the absurd clip on MSNBC.
Let's talk about young Latino voters, because Bernie Sanders makes the other side of the argument. Joe Biden is going to need a much more progressive message and progressive policies if he's going to get them out and voting.
Steph, if I was Joe Biden and I wanted to win the state of Florida, I would not be taking Bernie Sanders' advice. Bernie Sanders is the reason why the socialist label has stuck for some voters on Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders is the reason why a lot of South Florida Hispanics in particular are afraid that the Democratic Party has moved too far to the left, why they're susceptible to this messaging from the Trump campaign that they should fear the Democratic Party. That's why Joe Biden has to reintroduce himself and tell these voters, I am a deal maker. I spent decades in the Senate trying to bring Republicans and Democrats together. I was the guy Barack Obama would send to negotiate with Mitch McConnell. I want to bring this country together. I am not a radical, and nothing in my record indicates that. That's the message that a lot of these Latino voters, people who understandably are concerned with all this talk about socialism, because they left their countries fleeing those ideas and fleeing those kinds of revolutions. So they need to hear from Joe Biden. They need to know who he is. And when it comes to South Florida Hispanics, at least, if I was Joe Biden, I would not be taking Senator Sanders' advice.
Yes. Don't take the advice of Bernie Sanders, but you should take the advice of a former Republican congressman who lost his race in 2018 and no longer holds a seat. That's who you should be listening to, Carlos Curbelo. Let me show you the amount of BS in this segment. And this has been a running theme with MSNBC and their discussion of Bernie Sanders and Florida. Morning Joe last week discussed how Bernie's hurting Joe Biden in Florida with Latino voters. Before I get to Florida specifically, let me start with the overview here from the primary. This is from Jacobin. After an intensive year-long effort to earn Latino support, Sanders walked away with 53% of Latino voters in Nevada, 3 times as much as his closest competitor, Joe Biden, who secured 17%. On Super Tuesday, Sanders won 49% in California compared to runner-up Biden's 19%, and he won 39% of the Latino vote in Texas compared to 26% for runner-up Biden. So don't listen to the guy that was winning the Latino vote in big numbers in the primary. No, listen to the man that is a Republican who lost his race in Florida. That's who you should be listening to. The facts are right here. Now, if you want to get to Florida specifically, let me first start with another eye-opening piece of data. Vox here writes, take Florida, where Biden soundly defeated Sanders, winning 62% of the vote to the senator's 23%. It was Biden's biggest win of the day and one of his strongest showings in the primary so far. But even there, 55% of primary voters said they support a government plan for all instead of private insurance, meaning healthcare, as compared to the 33% who opposed such a shift. In Illinois and Arizona, Biden won smaller but still commanding victories. Yet 61% of Illinois primary voters and 58% of Arizona primary voters prefer a government plan to the current system. So even in states that Biden won in big numbers, like 62% in Florida, a majority of Florida voters want a government-run healthcare system. This flies completely in the face of the argument that Bernie Sanders and his policies, his socialist agenda, hurts Joe Biden. They actually want Bernie's agenda. More here. If you actually look at the breakdown of the Florida vote, so this is from the New York Times, take a look here. Bernie Sanders won Latinos 18 to 44. 45 for Bernie, 42 for Biden. The actual division here in the vote is age. If you look at the primary, voters under 45 supported Bernie Sanders in big numbers. Voters over 45 largely supported Joe Biden. And because a lot of Democratic primary voters are older, Biden won the nomination. But the breakdown here isn't really, Latino, white, black, it's age. Bernie Sanders dominates with voters under 44 or under 45. And as Stephanie Ruhle there laid out in the beginning of her question, when you're trying to reach younger Latino voters, that progressive message is exactly what Joe Biden needs. And already, look, you're going to lose a lot of the older Latino vote in Florida to Trump anyway. Donald Trump won half of Latinos in Florida against Hillary Clinton. So a good chunk of that, Biden has no shot. But he does have the ability to get younger voters who otherwise might not come out to vote at all. But if he doesn't have a message for them to appeal to them, then they're not going to come out and vote for him. That's Biden's issue in Florida. He is not appealing to younger voters in general. Further breakdown here. This is really eye-opening. The story that is missing from Florida's primary result is that Cuban Americans preferred Bernie 47% over Biden 46%. This is a huge deal even after the smears Bernie received on Cuba. This shows a historic political shift to the left in the Cuban American community. And I spent an hour just to make sure this was real. I spent an hour tracking down where this information came from. I eventually found it. It is a Univision poll right before the primary in Florida. Again, I link to all these below the video. You can go through this data yourself. But you go to question 34 here. Among the Democratic candidates running for president, who are you currently planning to vote for in the primary? Take a look. For voters that are Cuban, Joe Biden, 46, Bernie Sanders, 47. It's a split. And again, largely that's because of the age difference. So the idea that Bernie Sanders is the reason Joe Biden is not doing well in Florida is completely insane. Biden has older voters. A lot of older voters in Florida are voting for Trump. Bernie Sanders appeals to younger voters. A lot of younger voters right now are not all that enthused. If Biden does something to actually appeal to them and work to appeal to the Latino community specifically of younger voters, then he will be able to get out the vote and get these people to vote and help him in bigger numbers than he already has right now. But I will say in Florida, Biden's not doing well. He doesn't need Florida to win the race, but of course it would help to have Florida. But even just generally, Biden has to reach out to younger voters. That's his problem. The reason Bernie had them isn't because of Bernie's awesome personality. Bernie's a nice guy, but that isn't why he won voters under 45. Bernie won voters under 45 because he actually spoke to the issues. Healthcare, education, wages, climate change. Biden has to talk about that stuff. Right now, he's doing a great job being anti-Trump. He has some great anti-Trump ads. That's fine. Keep those out there. But at the same time, you also have to try and excite the base.